James Carter, they called him Big Jim on the CB. 20 years hauling freight across America. He'd seen it all. Sunrises that looked like heaven, storms that felt like hell. He was tough, seasoned, fearless, until Route 491. Jim wasn't one for superstition. He laughed at ghost stories, scoffed at urban legends. Give him a strong cup of coffee and 18 wheels, he'd face anything. But there was something different about Route 491. Something that made the hairs on his neck stand up. He tried to ignore it. Focused on the road, the hum of the engine, the Johnny Cash on the radio, but the feeling lingered, a bad taste in his mouth, like he was driving into the belly of a beast. Route 491, the Devil's Highway, they called it. A ribbon of asphalt snaking through the heart of nowhere, desolate stretches of road shadowed by towering pines. It had a reputation: accidents, disappearances, strange lights in the night sky. Truckers whispered about it at fuel stops, shared stories over cups of lukewarm coffee. Jim had heard the stories. He dismissed them, of course, just spooky tales to pass the time. But now, driving deeper into the highway's eerie embrace, he felt a shiver crawl down his spine. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. The silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic thump of his tires on the asphalt. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. His knuckles, usually tanned and weathered, were pale in the fading light. The setting sun cast long, distorted shadows, turning the familiar landscape into something menacing. He felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched. He shook his head, trying to clear the unsettling thoughts. Just his imagination playing tricks on him. It was just a road. Just another long haul. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and deep violet. The colors bled into each other, creating a surreal canvas that seemed almost too beautiful for the ominous night ahead. As the last rays of sunlight vanished, a sense of foreboding settled over the landscape, like a dark shroud wrapping itself around the world. The world around Jim faded into darkness, swallowed by the shadows of the looming trees. Each tree seemed to whisper secrets of the night, their branches swaying like skeletal fingers in the wind. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, but to Jim, it felt like the silence of a graveyard. He flicked on his high beams, the bright lights cutting through the gloom, but doing little to dispel the growing sense of unease. The beams illuminated the road ahead, but the darkness beyond seemed impenetrable, as if it were a living entity, waiting to swallow him whole. He'd been driving for hours, the monotony broken only by the occasional crackle of the CB radio. The static-filled voices of other truckers were a distant comfort, a reminder that he wasn't entirely alone on this forsaken road. Yet the isolation was palpable, pressing down on him like a weight. He was behind schedule, a late delivery gnawing at him. The clock on the dashboard seemed to mock him, its hands moving too quickly, yet the miles stretched endlessly before him. Every minute lost felt like a step deeper into the unknown. He pushed on, deeper into the heart of the Devil's Highway. The name itself was enough to send shivers down his spine, a road infamous for its eerie occurrences and unexplained disappearances. Each mile marker he passed felt like a countdown to something inevitable. The air grew colder, the silence deeper. It was as if the night itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The temperature inside the cab dropped, and Jim could see his breath misting in the air, a stark contrast to the warmth of the day. The darkness seemed to press in, suffocating. It was a tangible force, wrapping around the truck, making the headlights seem feeble and inadequate. The road ahead was a narrow ribbon of light in an ocean of black. He saw movement in the headlights, a fleeting shadow darting across the road. His heart skipped a beat, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Was it an animal? Or something else entirely? A figure standing in the middle of the road. It was tall, slender, and shrouded in shadow. The figure was motionless, as if waiting for him. Jim's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Tall, slender, shrouded in shadow. The figure seemed almost ethereal, like a ghost from a nightmare. Jim's pulse quickened, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He had to act fast. He slammed on the brakes, the truck screeching in protest. The tires skidded on the asphalt, the sound echoing through the night. The truck came to a halt just inches from the figure. His heart hammered in his chest. He could feel it pounding against his ribcage, each beat a reminder of his fear. He stared at the spot where the figure had been, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the glare. The figure was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. The road was empty, the night silent once more. He sat there for a moment, catching his breath, trying to rationalize what he had seen. His mind raced with possibilities, each more implausible than the last. Was it a ghost? A figment of his imagination? A trick of the light? The headlights playing tricks on his tired eyes? He wanted to believe it was something mundane, something explainable. Fatigue playing with his mind? He wasn't sure. The long hours on the road had taken their toll, and he knew that exhaustion could do strange things to a person's perception. But one thing was certain: the fear was real. It clung to him, a cold, unrelenting presence that refused to be shaken off. He could feel it in his bones, a primal instinct warning him of danger. Cold and sharp, it cut through his usual calm. It was a fear unlike any he had ever known, a fear that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. He was alone, on a road with a dark reputation, and something felt terribly wrong. The night was far from over, and Jim had the unsettling feeling that this was just the beginning of his ordeal. of the phantom sedan to haunt him. Seemed almost ethereal, like a ghostly apparition. A figure standing on the side of the road, stayed.